I'm actually, for the last 2 years, I kept my Mac on Boston time because I'd lived in Boston for 25 years. Now I live in the Bay Area, so I keep it on Bay time. Bay time? Yeah, California time. Okay, hello everyone. This is I'm going to be kind of leaning to the right here because you're more numerous. Okay, but it doesn't mean I don't love you folks too. Okay, so here's the talk right here. Hopefully this is what you think. Oh dear, that was kind of scary. Okay, party planning, that sounds good. Okay, boom. All right, so here's the talk. So you'll get a couple of insights. This is a novice talk, so I'm really going to be trying to address how do you even get started in these sorts of things, okay? And there's an abstract here, and I think there's some contact information somewhere. Anyway, I'll be around today, tomorrow, and the next day. So let's make this small. And we'll just start here. Last time I was in New York, I was at JupyterCon, and that was a lot of fun. And I did a poster. So reuse everywhere, right? So I kind of like munged the poster some rather than doing a slide pack. We'll just sort of like run through the poster quickly, and then we're going to actually do some live Jupyter code, just because it's always fun to see what happens. Okay, so the whole idea of real estate is that it's expensive, it's hard to get, and there's a lot of money to be made in knowing more about it. All right, so I'm not going to read these to you. If you were here in July, you could have read it for yourself. All right, but the sorts of things that make this interesting is like here's Zillow giving away 1.2 million to come up with a better pricing model. Redfin is in there trying to figure out how to disintermediate the realtor, basically doing short sheeting of commissions one way or the other. They've gone public. You can check their price on your own. Okay, so this talk is about looking at a different slice of the data. We'll take a look at the Zillow slice very, very briefly in just a moment. We're going to be looking at the notion of a farm, a realtor farm, looking at the realtor as being a key ingredient in the pricing structure as well. All right? So in order to determine what a farm is, to know what your area of geography is important, knowing your longitudes and latitudes is really important, right? So you know whether or not things are close enough to constitute a cluster. Okay, that's what I'm calling a farm. Okay? So there's a little geography lesson here. Countries, small countries, and glaciers, right? Those are the numbers there, and the tools exist within Python, yay. And there's some of the tools. So what we'll do is we'll set a threshold, we'll look around, we'll try to see things that might kind of go together, right? The notion of clustering. What goes together in terms of realtor transactions, both on the listing side and on the selling side. The selling agent is what the realtor who's associated with the buyer is called. It's a little backwards in terminology, but it makes sense from within the industry. And we're going to use this Vicente mathematics. I have a picture of this later on. And we're going to merge these kind of baskets together. We're going to sort of have putative points that seem to be close enough to be interesting. And then we're going to see how much overlap there is between those points and munge them all together, okay? And let's see, we'll take advantage, oops, here we go. So those are the modules. Well, this is kind of interesting how this works. Go sideways or forwards, here we go. All right, so we're going to be drawing dots on a map, which is always very cool to do. Google is going to help with that. They're going to look like this. We're going to draw circles, and we're going to figure out a convex hull. And we'll sort of look at whether or not the effect of having, whether certain realtors have an effect on the selling price relative to the listing price. Now, there are actually several negotiations that take place during a real estate transaction. First of all, it could just be a for sale by owner and a direct buyer, no realtor involved, okay? But that's fairly rare, just because of the logistics of doing open houses, qualifying buyers, and working through all the paperwork. So, more typical is a situation where there is a seller of the home who has a listing agent who reports to a broker in terms of fiduciary responsibility. On the buyer's side, there is the selling agent, which also has a broker. When the house gets listed, the listing price is negotiated between the listing agent and the seller of the home, as are other terms such as the length of the contract and whatever other services the realtor might provide. So that's the first negotiation. The second negotiation will happen between the buyers and the selling, right, to actually come up with a price relative to. So one of the things that I think is quite interesting is how does the selling price relate to the listing price, and how does the listing price relate to the appraised price? Now, the appraised price, if you're looking off of tax bases, you know, the assessed value, boy, that's all over the place, all over the country. It gets updated at weird intervals. There's also the mortgage, the lender's appraisal, right? That comes in, and they'll do it on the spot. If it's a cash buyer, there's a waiver of mortgage contingency. Okay, so this is my better half, my realtor ad hoc, Zelda, and she gave me some sort of ideas about this whole thing. She used to be a data warehouse engagement manager for PricewaterhouseCoopers. She got tired of working with fake houses, and now she deals with real houses in Boston and in California, but sadly not New York. All right, so this is a very cool chart that uses graphics, and I wish my charts were as cool as this. This is Paperscape. Those of you who use ArchiveX, check out Paperscape, okay? And if I could make my charts look this cool, I'd be very happy. All right, so let's look at what Zillow is doing. All right, so the typical real estate commission is, say, between 5 and 7% for residential, 10% for commercial. That commission is split between listing and selling side by some agreement, and between the agent and the broker, also by some agreement on both sides. So there are multiple splits going on. So people have different incentives in terms of who they may sell the house to. You know, if you have multiple offers coming in, right, one consideration is whether or not the agent is going to recommend the offer with the best commission, right, as opposed to the best return for so that's covered by ethics and all sorts of legislation, no different than any other fiduciary responsibility, like an attorney or a stockbroker. So if we look at a property here, New York, oh, that's cool, right? 10% of that would be 100,000, 5% would be about 50,000, right? So there's a serious change involved in the commission. And if we look at Zillow's, what are the rules here? Valuation, somewhere here we go. They improved from 14% margin of error to 5%. Now, bear in mind, you could have two equivalent offers that differ by 5%, roughly equivalent, okay? One offer has a mortgage contingency, and it has a sale of previous home contingency, and it has an inspection contingency. That's the offer that's 5% higher. The one that's 5% lower than that offer is not going to have any contingencies. If the owner wants to sell quickly, they're going to go with the cash offer, right, without inspection or contingency. These are things that are negotiated. So when a realtor helps a buyer put together an offer, right, this may be a consideration. Put in, if you can get the cash, make a cash offer. Once you get accepted, if you want to refinance it, you go right ahead. But you're committed, you have to have proof of funds, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So the thing about the Zillow prizes, the Zillow rules, and you're just going to have to trust me on this. I don't want to take the time to find it. They have a couple rounds on the data. And the second round of data says, that you can use any kind of data you want, except for the kind of data, external data, except for the kind of data that is typically contained in an MLS, multiple listing service information, which is kind of begging the question in a way. Certainly there's a lot of overlap. There's square feet, number of bathrooms, how old is the roof, what the taxes are. So part of the reason they may be wanting to avoid doing MLS is because MLS data is owned, just like Zillow data is owned. And the major source of income for Zillow right now are realtors who are paying Zillow for marketing to generate leads. Zillow makes very little money any other way. So having that relationship with the realtors is a love-hate relationship, right? Because the realtors are paying Zillow to do lead generation, and if they don't get any leads, it's not a good deal for them. All right, so let's just look at what we're going to be generating. We're going to be generating something like this. And oops, too big, too much. Let's go smaller. So this is California. It's near the ocean. Okay, there we go. And this is where I relocated a couple years ago, right over to here. One of these dots represents the house I have. Okay, so these are transactions. Berkeley, not all the transactions, but I pulled some key areas. Albany, Berkeley area, San Leandro, Fremont, right? The Tri-Valley over here, Livermore Labs. All right. Okay, so let me very quickly show you what the Kaggle data looks like. But I didn't use any of the Kaggle Zillow data in what I'm going to show you in a couple minutes. But I did download the data just to sort of see how it's organized. I think it's too late to enter the competition. I think they're already in their second round. And I'm using an IPython notebook, which I think there will be several other talks on Jupyter, or IPython as it used to be called. And that's all we do to launch it. Let me make this a little larger in case you didn't see that. All right, just Jupyter Notebook and then the name of the notebook. And let's make this big. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and restart and clear all the output. Because I think it's exciting to see things happen as. So you can see there's very little in this. This somewhat demonstrates how you use pandas, how you use the notebook. So if If you already know this, you're a step ahead. So there's some training data, and this is what it looks like. Pandas very nicely organizes it with headings for you. Gives you just a front slice, a tail slice. You can see there's a lot of activity in here. This asterisk means it's thinking. So what they're wanting you to do is come up with estimates for prices, depending on which quarter a house actually went on the market, to predict prices, right, in the future. So you didn't have prices that were already, they weren't asking you to create the past. They're asking you to create the future. And there are like 2 million properties, in this property database. Okay, so we're going to look for all the properties that have more than 12 bathrooms. So this is some really remarkable magic that you can just sort of pop it in here, and number of bathrooms, and oh yeah, it's cranking through 2 million properties, and I don't know, it shouldn't take that long. All right, we'll let that cook. For whatever reason, it's taking a little bit. Oh, there it goes. It's still thinking. All right, we'll just let it think over here. And I'm just going to come up with, oh, there we go. Wasn't too bad. Compared to the punch card era, where it took hours or days to get stuff back, 2 or 3 minutes is not bad. All right, so you can see here is all their information there. Nicely calculated. Okay. And more and more. All right, so right here in their list, there were a fair number of properties, that's the entire, that had more than 190 properties out of the 2 million had more than 12 bathrooms. Might be a motel, you never know. It's a property, right? Or mansion. And there's a really nice Excel, for those of you who still use Excel at work or at home. Pandas has some nice Excel information, and boom, boom. Okay? So this is the Zillow competition. All right. No connection with Zillow. Okay, we'll move that aside. Actually, I'm just going to kill this window. Jupyter sometimes, I'm just going to shut down the kernels there so that it's not taking up too much resource. Okay. So I'm going to have 2 notebooks going. Okay. And the first notebook is going to be my Python 2 version. Right, I'm still kind of mostly in Python 2 these days. Kind of Python 2, Python 3, right? According to the latest stats. Okay, good. All right. All right, so let's spin that up. Okay, so eventually I'll post this code somewhere, but you can contact me if you want it sooner. All right, so in order to advance through cells, right, there's the square brackets tell you it's IPython as opposed to the triple brackets for just base Python. And the IPython notebook, now Jupyter, JU for Julia, PY for Python, R for R. And I can come up here to execute a cell, this one I think, run cell, there we go. And now it's run all this code. And so I'm going to be using just a ragtag collection of things. GM is probably the most interesting thing on this list. And I'll use shift return to actually do the stepping because it's a little faster. And I'm just going to go ahead and run through this. There's a couple versions of pickle, depending on which version of Python you're on. A little convenience function. Oh my God, spaghetti code there, right? Goes on for a while, right? Kind of works. So there wasn't a real need to break it up into lots of functions because it's not a product yet. But I probably should. All right, anyway, we'll let that cook. And I think it's already done, right? It's just definitions, really. There we go. All right. So I'm going to go get the data. So I drew down all this MLS data at one point, and I massaged it, I pickled it. So pickling, or JSON, right? It's pretty much equivalent. Just use pickle in this case. And we're going to grab, and this is what the MLS of the data comes out. So what I did is I went through and I found the geographic longitude and latitude for every address in the MLS listing, right? If I tried to do that real time, I'm pinging the server constantly and I would get some nasty messages. For instance, what kind of messages would I get? There we go. Oh, things like this. I would get timed out, too many requests, no service, all those things that you don't want to have happen during a live demo, right? So, plus, if you're going to be playing with the data a lot, once you have the longitude and latitude, there's no point in getting it more than once. So I was using a data dictionary in order to sort of make each address a key in my map file. All right, so let's keep going. A little more pandas, here we go. So we have the listing agent, the listing date, the list price, the sales price, the selling agents, square foot, etc. And I needed to do some stuff with dollar signs. So, whenever you work with real data, it's dirty, it's never in the right format. So Babel is a great place to work with currencies. One of several. They have a currency formatter that lets you go both ways if you have dollar signs and commas to process it or to generate it. And we see right here, right, just another look at this information. Okay, so what I wanted to do was to actually be able to use a widget so I could just grab a particular realtor. The only problem is the widget tool I found only works on Python 3. It's IPyWidgets, really cool stuff. But yeah, see, it's not popping up anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to pickle out some data, come over here and open up another notebook. And let me get the most recent one here. There we go. Okay. So now I have a Python 3 version. Now it's possible to call, I could have done this within my Jupyter Notebook directly, but then that's just more stuff to figure out. And I should really just convert this whole thing to Python 3 at some point. So I'll just come up here, and I thought it'd be kind of interesting to see what you're up against when you're trying to use small, clever ideas. All right, so one of the things I discovered is in order to use your widgets, you got to have this Jupyter extension enabled first, and we'll see errors on that. Oops. What didn't it like about that? Let's try that again. Am I in the wrong directory? Let's just keep going. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this here. Okay. Okay, Python 3. I'm using Anaconda. I have a Python 3 environment. I really need to get moved over to Python 3. It's true. Anyway, I'll just set this now, so presumably it won't bother us in the future. And then let me get my notebook going. So these widgets are very nice to have. Those of you who have any sort of JavaScript in your blood, you know all about widgets. Okay, so right here, boom, there's one of my widgets. And let me just make this a little larger here. And I can just go ahead and scroll through here, and I'll pick one of the agents. Let me try to find one that actually was fairly busy. Okay, so rather than do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm actually going to find out which realtor was busy. I'll do the same thing here. I'm just going to ask for a rank. So let me look at the 7th busiest agent. Oops. Ugh. There we go. Okay, it should still be okay. And let's see, oh, I need to set how big my radius is. I'm doing this in terms of degrees because that's how my longitude and latitude is set up. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and pump in a value. I'm just going to go with that number there. Right. And I'm going to find out who, so Nicole Kaze is a very busy realtor. And a couple of sort of trial by fires kind of thing to figure out how to actually pass things back and forth. Turns out if you try using an environmental variable, it's going to not work. The environmental variable is only local to the Jupyter Notebook environment and its children, not to its parents. So in order to pass the values across, I did a hack by creating a temporary file. So now we'll come over here, and you'll see I'll sort of grab that. And some things didn't work. We'll skip that. Didn't work because I couldn't change this widget object that I had created, but I can get it right here. It gives it to us as a list. And boom, we'll just run through this in the interest of time. It's waiting for. No. Okay. Rather than suffer through that, I'm just going to show you what some of the results look like. So right here, these are all the farms in the data set that I worked with. These are the farms for one particular realtor. And if we scroll over here, here we go. All right, so right here, the size of the circle indicates whether or not the property sold for above or below the list price. And the circles here indicate tentative farms. Now, why do you care? If a realtor knows a neighborhood really, really well, does that mean she's going to be able to sell your house for more than a realtor who doesn't? Are you going to give her the listing because she's just a known face? So again, you have to look at the listing price negotiation as well, because if you have multiple cash offers or otherwise truly equivalent offers, you may have a bidding war, more likely if you price it below the final transaction price rather than right at it. Right? If you price it above, say, the Zillow price, you might not get any offers. If you price it below, you may get multiple offers and end up going above the Zillow price or the other prices of that sort. Okay? So there's, let me see if I can come back to, here we go. On the farm. Okay. What's it hanging on? Okay, probably a good time for questions. I think we have 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left, okay. So let's see if I have an example here from the previous run. So the situation is pretty, when I looked at kind of a couple dozen realtors, clearly there are some realtors who consistently undersold their listing price and others that consistently oversold the listing price. So this is just areas to look, right? Things like time of year, and of course the buyer's urgency in selling are factors as well. So I think it's a much harder problem than Kaggle or that Zillow is saying. And talking to my wife, whose experience has been extensive on both coasts, she'll see offers that vary within 5%, and things like the closing date will be the main consideration. So I don't know how Zillow could ever estimate the price any closer than that. What people really want when they're on the buying side is 5% doesn't really matter to them as much as can they qualify for the loan and can they get the property, right? So framing the offer. So that's the direction I'm heading in, is figuring out how do we incorporate that kind of knowledge so that a buyer or seller can figure out what these other external effects are in terms of things like staging, right? And etc. So I think I'm really out of time now. Okay. Thank you. Oh, and let's see, I do have one. You can contact me at /40th Parallel Python. And also check out Python After Dark. Okay, Python Bridge, and also, etc. Okay, thank you.